Hey everyone, welcome back to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. Happy Friday, I suppose. I'm not in a particularly jovial mood today, and I almost didn't even make a video today because I've just been down. And it's not just being quarantined. I mean, that's hard for all of us, but it's a lot of other little things, actually none of which have to do with reading. At least not directly. Several of you know that I've been making a return to cycling and have been struggling with back problems. And for 2 months now, on again, off again, I've been having some pretty severe back spasms, and they are back with a vengeance the last couple of weeks. And so I have not been on my bike for almost 3 weeks now. And that always puts me in a worse mood when I don't get any exercise. And I haven't been able to get any exercise because I basically spend most of the day just trying to find a position that's comfortable that won't trigger another back spasm. I do have a doctor's appointment next week, although it's not for my back, it's just a diabetes checkup. But I have to bring up the issue of my back with my doctor because it's not getting any better and I don't know what's causing it. I don't know if it's muscular. I don't know if it's an actual back problem or if it's something else that I haven't even dreamed of yet. So that's put me in a pretty dismal mood recently. I don't really feel like talking about books that much. And this is a book channel, which presents a problem. I am still reading. I read about 150 pages a day. I usually have 3 books on the go at one time and try to read about 50 pages in each book throughout the course of the day. And I have been doing that. So I'm still getting my reading in, but I don't feel like I'm deriving a whole lot of pleasure from my reading these days. Some of it is everything else that's going on. Some of it is I've read a number of books in the last month that I just haven't really cared for. And I feel like I'm reading books that I'm having to read for my commitment to the BookTube Prize, but that I probably wouldn't read otherwise and have not particularly enjoyed. Sometimes I like being pushed out of my comfort zone. The BookTube Prize in the last 2 years has made me pick up a lot of books that I would never have read otherwise. And many of them have been wonderful. And so it's been a great byproduct of the prize that I have discovered books that I would have missed otherwise. But it also means reading some books that I really didn't want to read, didn't enjoy when I did read, and that means something else that I didn't get to read that I might have enjoyed. So that's a little bit depressing, I guess, from a reader's perspective. What I really want to do is rant about all the things that are just making me outraged, but it won't do any good if I do. The people who need to hear it wouldn't listen anyway, and all it's going to do is bring out the trolls to my channel. I already get automatic thumbs down on virtually every video I put up anyway. So somebody either hates everything I ever say or just likes to hate me. And I don't want to invite that just because I'm feeling miserable right now. So I'm not going to rant about all the things that I want to rant about. The one thing that is giving me pleasure these days is what I've been doing in the evenings after I finish reading, is I've been watching something on Netflix or on HBO, or occasionally I'll even go to Viki, the Korean free station. And the last couple of weeks I've been kind of diving back into K-dramas. In the past, the K-dramas that I have watched and loved have all been historical stories, something like Mr. Sunshine or Rookie Historian, things set in the 19th century or the early 20th century. But recently I've started experimenting with some contemporary K-dramas based on recommendations from people like Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventures and of Sarah from Hardcover Hearts. And the one that I finished earlier this week was the one I'd started last week, Itaewon Class, which is now one of my favorite shows that I've watched in years. I absolutely fell for this show. there's just something about it. And I don't really know why that rather than something else has struck me, but something about the aesthetic of Korean dramas has really captured my attention. And so I found a list of 30, more like 25 shows on Netflix that are the best K-dramas to watch. Netflix has bought into the K-drama popularity in a big way, and now there are a ton of K-dramas on Netflix if you're in the US. I don't know about what Netflix has overseas, but then there's also a free site called Viki, V-I-K-I, which you can see free K-dramas as well. They interrupt them with ads frequently unless you get the paid version. I haven't done that yet, but I probably will at some point. But the one I started this week did not sound like it was going to be one that I would care about, because it sounds very teenagey, very romantic comedy style. And yet I'm enjoying it a great deal. It's called My First Love, and it's about a group of 4 college age or slightly older than college age acquaintances who are all friends of one particular guy, and they all come together because of some bizarre circumstances. And it's almost like watching a Shakespeare comedy of errors. It's really quite funny at times. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. The acting is over the top, but it's my one pleasure during the day now is to look forward to watching my K-drama at night. So it's what's keeping me going during these difficult times. I finished last Friday. I finished 3 books I mentioned to you last Friday that I was nearly done with, and I recapped them last Friday, so I'm not going to go over them again this week. Since then, I finished 1 more and have 2 more that I will finish later today. So basically, I'm still reading a book each week. I'm just doing 3 at a time. The one I finished is one of the nonfiction books for the quarterfinals of the BookTube Prize, and that's Trick Mirror by Tolentino. You've probably heard about this book. It's been talked about by many people here on BookTube. It's received a lot of praise. It's a collection of essays, and all the essays were written for the book, so they're not just a compilation of her journalism in other places, although she has since written about these topics in other places as well. And I'm kind of ambivalent about the book. I really enjoyed parts of it, and I really didn't enjoy parts of it. And it took me a while to figure out why I was reacting to it the way I was. I didn't even realize until I finished the book that the subtitle of the book was Reflections on Self-Delusion. Because the whole time I'm reading this book, I'm thinking to myself, she's just deluded. She's complaining about all these different cultural phenomena that she is a part of, and she admits she's a part of, but she acts as if you shouldn't judge her for being a part of what she's judging other people for being a part of. And I think she is self-deluded in a lot of ways, but she knows it. So I guess that excuses it. I'm not really sure. I wrote this in my Goodreads review last night. I'm not really sure what she wants us to take away from this collection of essays. She's very brutally savage about a lot of really heinous things in our culture, social media, for instance, but yet she's very much in the middle of it. But I think she feels that she somehow rises above it because she's a journalist, and therefore, because she's writing about it, that makes her participation okay. And I don't understand that stance, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. When she is at her best is when she's writing about a cultural phenomenon and not writing about herself. When she's taking down social media culture, when she's taking down the wedding industry and its history, she's a wonderful journalist. But then she pivots in those essays to a reflection on her own positions within those positions within those issues. And I think she loses a lot of, not just credibility, but I think she loses a lot of what she's good at when she starts talking about her own reaction. For instance, that she doesn't want to get married. And the reason why is basically going back to her feminist training. She believes that marriage is a horrible institution for women, and that her conclusion is that the day of the wedding, making the bride into a princess, is her compensation for a shitty marriage. I find that pretty reductive, but that's her reason for hating getting married. And then she realizes that that's kind of self-deluded, that she doesn't want to trade being a princess every day for being a princess on one day. And so that kind of ruined a really spectacularly good essay in my mind. So I'm kind of ambivalent about this collection. Parts of it I loved, parts of it I absolutely did not like. And it was, I think, because she at times is taking on the role of a journalist. At times she's parroting cultural theory, which is really tedious. And then she turns it into a little bit of a memoir at times and undercuts her own role as a journalist. So I don't know, I was frustrated by it. I didn't hate it by any means. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, and I'm pretty generous with stars. So 3 stars is right in the middle of my rankings because I liked a lot of it, but I disliked a lot of it too. So anyway, that's another book that I'm frustrated by because I wanted to like it more than I actually did. And I'm starting to wonder now, am I deluded and I'm just becoming cranky because of being under quarantine for so long? Or am I just on a bad streak of books that aren't for me? And I don't know the answer to that. So I'm sure somebody will tell me, though, in the comments, not in a particularly nice way. The other 2 books that I'm nearly finished with and will finish later today, I've only got about 25 pages in each one left. The first one is a novel by Etaf Rum, A Woman Is No Man, which is a multi-generational story about the women in a family in Brooklyn, New York, but the family is from Palestine. And it covers a woman who has 4 daughters and therefore is seen as failing her family because she didn't have sons, as if the woman has any control over that, or even genetic control over that. Over her mother-in-law, who is brutal to her at times, over her overbearing and violent husband, that also goes into the generation of her children and another section of her sister-in-law. So it really focuses on 4 women, the wife, the sister-in-law, the wife's daughter, and the wife's mother-in-law. There are some other characters too, but they don't get their own focus chapters as much. And I'm nearly finished with this. It's also built around a bunch of family secrets that you get over time. And so I don't want to say too much about the actual story because that gives away too many of the family secrets. But I'm actually really enjoying this one. If you can say you're enjoying a book that's so brutal towards women, it's really interesting to get a picture of that part of Arab culture that I don't understand well at all. It's also interesting to see the different generational views of that culture once they have hit America. And it's also interesting because I believe it's a debut novel written by a woman who teaches here in North Carolina. So yay, North Carolina, for generating, somebody who's writing some important things. It's not the best novel that I've read this year, but it's one of my favorites of the year so far. I'm really enjoying it. I'd say it's probably between 4 and 5 stars, probably leaning more towards 4, but I'm really enjoying that one. And it's really interesting too because the other book that I'm almost finished with, I just have the epilogue left to read, is Guest House for Widows by Azadeh Moaveni, which is about the women of ISIS. It's a story. It's not a story. It's an account of 13 different women who are drawn into becoming ISIS brides. And some are from the UK, some are from Tunisia, some are from Germany, some are from all over the place. And she talks about each of these different women's experiences over the length of the essential 2 years, 2005 to 2007, that ISIS was at its peak. The book is fascinating. It's so well researched, but for me, it's very, very confusing. The politics, of course, in that region are so complex that even people who study that professionally often struggle to differentiate between all the different players and the different groups and the different philosophical, religious, and cultural stances that the different groups take. And you're exposed to all of that in this book, as well as all the different women's individual stories. And the politics for me were just impossible to keep straight. And so I struggled with that quite a bit. But I think one of the reasons that I struggled with it is she broke the women's stories up. So you'd get a short bit of one woman's story, then go on to another woman's story, then another group of women's stories, and then come back and repeat the process over and over again. And keeping all the different women's stories straight in my head was a real challenge. I think she might have lost something in terms of the chronological progression of the stories had she not broken them up and told them individually from start to finish. But I think for somebody like me who struggles to keep all these different ideas straight anyway, the book might have gained a little more coherence had she done one story at a time from start to finish, then started on a different story from start to finish, and you start to see how they interweave. It's a smarter book than I am, is what I'm saying, and so I struggled. But it's really interesting to read about the Muslim women who are drawn into ISIS and the cultures that they come from and some of the reasons why they get drawn in, a lot of which boil down to recklessness and naivete, and how that compared with A Woman Is No Man, the Arab culture from this family from Palestine. So reading those two side by side was an interesting intertextual moment for me, because that's the area of the world that I probably know the least about. We hear about it a lot, but trying to really understand it is such a challenge, and there's so much going on, and it's changing so rapidly all the time that it's impossible to make sense out of all of it for somebody like me who hasn't studied it my whole life. So that's what I've been reading and will finish reading later today. The 3 books that I'll be reading this next week are the last 3 that I have for the 48 quarterfinalists. So as of roughly a week to 10 days from now, by the end of May, I'll be finished with all the quarterfinalists, which was my phase 1 goal of my BookTube Prize challenge. The rest of the challenge is to go back and pick up the books that got eliminated in round 1 that I have not read, and have all of those read by the end of the prize at the end of September. And I'll be able to do that on a slightly more relaxed pace once we get past these 3 and May finishes up and we move into the semifinals. So the 3 that I am going to be reading this week are The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee by David Treuer. And it's a pretty healthy sized book, so that's going to take me probably 10 days to read. Then the last novel I have to read is one of the shortest ones. It's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, which you've heard about from everybody. And then the other one is the book about Greenland, The Ice at the End of the World by Jon Gertner, which is also pretty long. I'm hoping that there's a healthy chunk of note pages at the back, that it's not all text, so it doesn't take me forever. But those are the 3 that I'll be reading next week, and that will complete the 48 for me for the quarterfinalists. I think that will put me somewhere about 72 or 73 of the 96 original books on the BookTube Prize. So that gives me 4 months to read the last 24 or so, which is not going to be a problem. I have been listening to a lot of music. I don't have any particular piece to feature this week, but I have listed, as I always do, I've listed all the works that I heard this week in the description box below, as well as a link to the Apple Music playlist that I've been compiling. As I listen to each work, I dump it in that playlist, and that playlist is now up to something like 112, 113 hours worth of music. So if you really want to take a deep dive into orchestral music, just dive into that playlist and have fun. It's not really organized in any fashion other than kind of the order that I listen to them. Apple Music doesn't make organizing a huge playlist all that easy, especially when a symphonic work often has 4 tracks to it, so you're having to keep up not just with a single song, but with 4 tracks. But it's all there. Enjoy as much as you care to, and you can see some of the things that I've been listening to, and hear a sample at least of the things that I've been listening to over the last several months. I probably have about 185, 190 works left on my list, and I'm cranking out 25 or 30 a week. So I'll be through with this part of the project pretty soon, sooner than I thought. I thought it was going to take me about a year to do this project, and I don't think it's going to take me that much longer. And then I think I'll shift the music project into focusing on new release albums. Apple Music gets a good selection of new release classical albums every week, and I may shift to maybe focus on one of the better recordings that I find in the new releases after I finish this phase of the project. So that's what I've been up to. I'm glad I did the video. I didn't want to do the video, and I hope I'm not just losing steam with BookTube in general. I'm finding that I'm not watching as much BookTube as I used to, and so I'm way behind on catching up with other people's videos. And I went to bed last night staring at the ceiling thinking, oh, you're supposed to film tomorrow, and I really didn't want to. And I didn't feel any better about it this morning, but I woke up so early, I had extra time, so I thought, I'll do it. So I'm hoping that next week I'm in a better frame of mind. I hope you've had a better week than I've had, and I hope your week ahead looks promising. Please stay healthy. It's one of the things I could rant about is the behavior of people right now in the United States. It's baffling to me what people are doing right now, even in my hometown of Raleigh-Durham. There's things that are happening publicly that just drive me insane. So be safe, be healthy, try to be happy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.